Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, I'm covering war defense teams in this video, having last given you an update roughly a year ago in June 2025. There is a reason I've held off on updating this video, and this video is going to be a bit circuitous in nature. As a brief outline, I'll tell you why I believe that war defense teams don't hugely matter. Then I'll contradict myself and tell you which defense teams have been working, before telling you what I believe is the best war defense in the game at the moment. Then I'm going to come back round and tell you why none of this matters anyway. I know it all seems contradictory, but bear with me as it will all become clear shortly. Thanks as always my Patreons and YouTube members for their support. So I have a relatively big audience, and every time I do one of these videos or talk about a tier list or a raid team, it is impossible to cater to the needs of everyone. Level 69 is going to have a very different roster to a level 20 player. I'm currently playing an Alpha Legion and we are one of around 14 guilds in Battlefield 5. I don't think I'm a particularly special player, but I have a deep roster from years of playing and all of your generous support. And according to our internal war tracking metrics, I lose about 6 or 7 war battles per season. That is a roughly 90% rate of one-shot clears. Most players in Battlefield 5 are in a similar position due to their deep rosters and AI mastery born from years of playing. You can pick the best characters in the game in war, construct what you might think are really strong teams, and then you'll fight in a war where your opponents only drop 20 tokens overall. That means that players generally are one-shotting everything. The problem, if you consider it one, is that the AI is just so easy to beat. You can give them bonus health and defensive buffs, but if the AI is always hitting a summon every turn, it doesn't really matter how long it takes to chip them down. Now, don't lose hope. I'm going to contradict myself shortly, but honestly, the most important thing in Guild War Defense is knowing the map that you're going to fight on and tailoring your team accordingly. Unfortunately, at the moment, the game doesn't organically tell you what map you're deploying your units on, nor their placement, so most players are kind of in the dark about it. If you join the official Discord server, you can get stuff like this, where guilds like Red Corsairs kindly give you the maps ahead of each war. For example, if I know that I'm in the HQ building, I can put Volk in spot 1. I know Volk has a movement speed of 2, so he will definitely take the high ground and then has control over a huge amount of the battlefield. My enemies can't easily deal with him and are forced into awkward decisions. Do I stay on the other side of the bridge, or do I enter the low ground and potentially take a lot of damage? My message for this part really is not to worry too much about building the perfect defensive team. Focus on other game modes and then strategically deploy your guys according to the map. Now, I told you I would contradict myself, so in the next bit, I'm going to tell you that despite the maps being the most important thing, there are still some defenses that work. There is this awesome community website called Tacticus.xyz that is run by community stalwart and friend Murky from the Tilath's Changers Guild. There's lots of useful info and metrics on the website, but I'm going to focus your attention on the Guild Wars section. Click on the war link at the top of the page, navigate using the Analyze button on the right hand side, and you'll end up here. Scroll down a little bit, and you can find the top defensive lineups page. Click on that, and you should end up here. Next, I've applied a filter here for the last 5 seasons and also just for the top 3 Battlefield. No offense to the guys in Battlefield 1 and 2. Then I click on the broken column to tell me which defenses broke the attacker most often, and you can start to draw trends and conclusions. The Genestealer team is honestly a pretty solid defense, largely due to the fact that it is really hard to defeat all of them cleanly, and they can punish you on the backswing due to their ambush/decoy mechanic. As a quick plug, I have shown how to deal with this team in my war offense video, but it can be a tricky defense for the inexperienced. The next defense is the Death Guard Death Ball, which is another really solid one and one I've been talking about for some time. It is hard to kill, resilient both through Rotbone's Revive and the innate Death Guard toughness, and those Death Guard can provide a good meat shield to protect your high threat damage dealers like Shozil. Again, I show players how to beat this team in my War Offense video, and I like using either Blood Angels or Genestealers for easy wins. In the third spot is a team I'll talk about in a second, but beyond that, there really isn't anything novel or consistent, just different flavors of Death Guard and Genestealer defenses. I think the Orcs are only here because they're relatively beginner characters and among the first faction that players own when playing the game. The takeaway for this section is that the Death Guard and Genestealer defenses are solid and reliable for most players. Let's keep going with more contradictions. There is one team that was popularized by former Red Corsairs, Alpha Legion, and Bloody Rose player, Nebula. It's called CRIMJ because each letter represents a letter for a character used in the lineup: Celestine, Rayvas, Isaac, Mephiston, and Jude. Jude is an absolute beating and killer character, but the easiest counters to her involve one of the following: having an Overwatch character and watch Jude run into that character and die, or having a high burst or movement team that can kill Jude despite her passive and then cover the subsequent decoys so she never respawns. The CRIMJ team covers both of those disadvantages. With the correct positioning, remember the map stuff that I talked about earlier, Celestine eats the enemy overwatches. Rivas then protects Jude from being overrun by the enemy offense. Then on your turn, you get a bunch of summons through Isaac, a strong Jude, and Mephiston as icing on the cake. Looking back at the Tacticus XYZ website, even if you look at Bloody Rose and Alpha Legion, the two top guilds in Battlefield 5 with deep rosters and experienced players, this defensive line has the most amount of successes, followed by a slight variation of the team with Sarkoel, but that team also maintains the core principles. The follow up really is, why don't more people run it? Well, it's simple. This team cannibalizes characters that you could successfully use elsewhere. Rivas is often with other characters, and you're breaking up the Genestealer cults to run this defense. For most players who don't have the roster depth, this team really isn't an option, but I'm showing it to you anyway because I think it's the best staple team to build right now. While we're talking about especially strong defensive teams, I'll throw on another quick bonus one in there. It's probably just as strong, if not stronger, than CRIMJ. Typhus, Toth, and Zakar make the mainstay of the team, where Typhus's active, followed by Toth's active and Zakar's secondary damage, is enough to annihilate a couple of characters. You then have a couple of flex slot options, but that core trio does the bulk of the heavy lifting. Rask does flame damage every turn, and along with Typhus provides a reliable damage outlet for Zakar. I like Lucius with the team, and you can perhaps add someone like Volk as well just to diversify your threats. Okay, so we're going to come full circle now with the last part in this video, and thanks for bearing with me. Now, none of this really matters anyway. Sure, you might build one of these teams and get a couple more defensive wins, or maybe if you get your entire guild to buy in, you can maybe even win another war or two. The problem is this: building characters for Guild War specifically takes a huge amount of resources. Tons of energy, gold, books, and badges. Leveling characters in this game is a grind, and every decision you make to upgrade, say, Jude, comes at the cost of something else. Tani, Tacticus Ambassador and Friend, did some calculations and slides to illustrate the relative return on investment for Guild War rewards. A full war season contains 60 fights plus all the setup and coordination and earns you about 30,000 credits in a high ranking battlefield, say around Silver 3. Let's compare that to Onslaught. It runs 16 hours, so roughly 52 times per live op cycle. You can do it solo, no coordination, and at your own pace and leisure. At Adamantine 1, each run gives 2 legendary badges, a mythic badge, and character shards. If you add all of that up in credit value, that's equivalent to around 400,000 war credits per live op cycle. Both of these calculations have excluded the War and Onslaught chests for winning and losing, but for what it's worth, Onslaught is better there as well. So Onslaught hands you roughly 13.4 times the rewards of War every month for a fraction of the effort. War is the most demanding game mode in the game and presents a good challenge, requires teamwork, and yet pays some of the worst return on investment rewards in the game from a time to rewards perspective. Now I get it, War rewards get a bit better as you move up in leagues, and it's perhaps not fair to compare a recently reworked game mode to an older one. So after all that, take away what you will. You have a website that gives you some ideas for defenses, a couple of solid teams, and then CRIMJ and the Psyker team. I play War because I like it and lets me use a lot of fringe characters who otherwise just collect dust on the proverbial shelf. But it is an intense 2 weeks every live op cycle, and I'd be lying if I wasn't exhausted by War 5 and 6. I hope Snowprint turns their attention to the game mode next and revitalizes it like they've done for Onslaught recently. Anyway, that's all I've got. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks as always to my Patreons and YouTube members for their support. Bye for now.